Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we are going to gas up the DeLorean, hop in the TARDIS, I don't know, one of those two, go back in time and look at the evolution of the Godot game engine. If you've never heard of it before, Godot is a free and open source game engine capable of creating 2D and 3D games, probably the most popular open source option out there, and like I said, it has come a very long way in a very short period of time. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to check out the history of Godot. So it is available at godotengine.org if you want to go ahead and check it out yourself. You can see here, Godot actually didn't start life as Godot. It started life as Larvita 3. This is the precursor to the Godot game engine, and the two founders of Godot recently actually open sourced this. So if you want to check it out, this is actually Genesis. This is where Godot originally came from. I'm not building it from source. I'm not going back all the way to this point in time. We're instead going to start at the very beginning with Godot. Now, the interesting thing is, on the downloads page, you can actually go to the archives, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at a bunch of the key milestone releases in the Godot's history. So you can go all the way from the Godot 4.2 beta that exists right now, all the way down to Godot 1.0, released back in December 2014. Although, ironically, this one doesn't work. So I actually had to grab the 1.0 release from a different source. But all of the various different versions that were released are available in the archive. Now, we're not going through all of these. We're just going to hit the major ones on the way through the history, and we're not going to go into them with a ton of depth. We're just going to basically look at the engine quickly. We're going to look at the release notes for it, find out what kind of new features came with it, and we'll go from there. So originally back in January 5th, and yeah, I've been covering this since the very beginning on Game From Scratch. I saw something in this engine, it appealed to me, and I've been following. I think I did the first set of tutorials for the Godot engine available. I have been hooked at the hip with Godot since it was very first released, and I'm kind of proud of how far along it has come. But I published my first story about Godot back in January the 5th, 2014, when they announced that Occam Studios was open sourcing their game engine, and you can see a screenshot of it in action right there. Now, this ultimately it ended up being released in February 2014, so we've got the first release of Godot, kinda. So this was the first open source release. I'm not sure that this was the first one. Yeah, I guess this was the 1.0 release. So we're not talking about what is new with it, other than the fact that the entire thing is new at this point in time. So let's go ahead and check it out. So here, Godot Engine 1.0, let's run it. Here is your launcher. This is what things looked like in 2014. So yeah, aesthetically, we've definitely come a little ways. Let's create our new project. So C:/temp, that some things never change. And then your project name is Godot 1, and then we'll go ahead and create it. To be honest, I hate to say it, I actually like this workflow better. The name should be second after the path. This is one of those things they changed in Godot that I never fully understood. Now, this one I do understood. It doesn't actually open your project after you create it, which is, let's just say, frustrating. So here we are. This is Godot 1.0. You're going to notice a bunch of things from the user interface. First off, there is a lot of gray/purple going on here. Second, there is no menu at all. Your toggles are all toggled this way. You're going to notice that your user interface is completely not customizable. Your file system has a bunch of stuff in it that you probably wouldn't expect because it's your entire file system at this point in time. And this is the basics of Godot. So in your scene, you create a new scene over here. You're going to see, again, there's a lot of similarities here. You've still got all of your nodes available. There's been a lot of renaming of nodes over time, but you're going to actually take a look. You had the UI controls at this point in time, the containers, you had all your 3D stuff. I think they had their own built-in physics at this point. Yeah, so various different physics available there. Navigation meshes were in here as well. So there was a bunch of stuff included at this point in time. But I think you can probably agree the user interface, it wasn't stunning as of yet. So that was Godot 1.0. And yeah, here we go. The announcement for this was December the 16th, 2014. Again, this was Genesis, so not much changed at this point in time. That wouldn't happen until basically Godot 2. There was a Godot 1.1, but we're not going to cover it today. Godot 2 is a jump forward for sure. We have improved scene instancing. So you can now edit any child node of an instance scene as you go through. Subinstances can be edited with persistent modification. So the nested scenes that we're all familiar with, they were added in Godot 2. Godot 2 scenes can not only be instantiated, but also inherited from. So this is pretty fundamental stuff to how Godot works. Also, they had an XML file format at that point in time, and this is the point where they switched to TOML. The TSCN format that we know today, this is a Godot 2.0 feature. A bunch of changes to the language itself. We actually now have singletons available. Again, very core things to Godot happened at this point in time. a number of changes to the editor itself. Let's go jump in and take a look at the editor. So here we are in Godot 2.0. You're going to notice something here. This is a 23 megabyte file. This is your launcher. Aesthetically, definitely much more pleasing than the purple gray that we had beforehand. This is starting to look a lot more consistent to what we end up with. We'll go ahead and create a new project here. Again, using this format, which I do honestly prefer. We'll go here and call this Godot 2. And we will throw the leading slash at the end here. Invalid path. Engine config must not... Okay, this is annoying. So the creation process has definitely improved a bit. So we'll call this one Godot 2. I have no idea where it actually created that first project of ours because the launcher apparently did not work the way I expected it to. So we definitely had some improvements over time with the usability of this. And here we go. So this guy was created, in the root of temp. It didn't create a subdirectory automatically. Okay, so here we are. This is Godot 2. We are, again, with a fixed user interface. We have now, though, a little bit of customizability here in that we can now put nodes in. Still not drag and drop at this point. Still no menu at this point. We can toggle between 2D and 3D mode over here. We have our familiar inspector window there. Again, you do have some docking capabilities here, but not really a ton. Your menus are basically these guys over here. So this was the interface at this point in time. Yeah, so that was Godot 2.0. From here, we moved on to Godot 2.1. I actually had done my full tutorial series at this point in time. So new features here include the new asset sharing platform. I think that's that asset lib. A new plugin API. We get a number of different changes to the plugin API. Eventually, we have GD native, which the end gets replaced by GD extension in Godot 4, but a new plugin API at that point in time, dynamic font support, internationalized UI support, editor visual customization, user customable key bindings, live script reloading, profiler, remote scene inspector, support for high DPI or retina displays, drag and drop support, contextual menus. Again, you did not have context menus until Godot 2.1. Script editor got improved asset pipeline, improved resource previews and thumbnails, and new animated sprite features. So that's what we got in Godot 2.1. I went ahead and downloaded it, but it's very similar to 2. So what we're going to do is jump straight up to the 3.0 release, and that is, so we went from 2.1 to 3. The naming convention or the versioning convention when it comes to Godot has never been incredibly consistent with where we've gone with that. But Godot 3 is here. Now, Godot 3 is probably where it became more viable to actually start making commercial games. So when we started seeing the beginning of what is now published on the Steam Asset Store. The Godot 2.x was more of a promise for the future kind of phase. Now, obviously, it was used from the very, very beginning to create games, but 3 is where things really kind of took off. So what do we have new in 3? We got a brand new 3D renderer at that point in time with full BSDF support, global illumination, post-processing, material shaders, GPU particles, and so on. We've got GLTF support, improved object support, SVG support, GD native. As I said, that was the first, well, I guess technically the second extension API system in place. And we got, at this point, we got support for C# and Mono. So 3.0 was a huge release. We also got visual scripting, which never really took off. I don't know why GD script was here as a feature. Got a brand new audio engine, VR support, bullet physics switched in. We got rid of the built-in physics, which actually come back at some point in the future. The export system was completely rewritten, and so on and so forth. And they got a lot of improvements to the UI editor. So let's go ahead and check out Godot 3. So here we are. This is your launcher. If you've seen this, this is a whole lot like Godot 4 at this point in time. Let's go ahead and create a new project. So it's Godot 3. And little known fact, but Godot doesn't work unless you create your project in the temp folder. At this point in time, the workflow is pretty consistent to what we see in the future. We're going to see some tweaks to this, especially in the 4.0 release. And we will go ahead and launch this. So here is Godot 3. Now, what you're going to notice is Godot 3 is starting to look a lot like what we are used to now. We do have these context menus available. These weren't available until 2.1, which is kind of insane. You've probably seen Godot 3 at this point, or if you're used to Godot 4, this is going to be very similar. We don't have docking windows, which is kind of an annoyance, but we do have the control over how to hook them up. Yeah, so this editor is definitely starting to get a bit more consistent to what we've seen in the future, and theming is in here again. A different extension system is in place as well. So that is Godot 3. Now, Godot 3 series actually had a number of releases, and I'm cherry picking here because I'm going to go straight to 3.5, so I don't want this video to be 9.5 hours long. We had a major release in Godot 3.4 as well, which again, had a lot of improvements involved with it. Portal occlusion culling, ACES tone mapping, support for a variety of platforms, more physics updates there. You can actually export your scenes as GLTF at this point, revamp the UI, and so on. In Godot 3, we added a number of features, and again, I would actually say 3.x branch was where we just started adding more and more and more and more functionality into it. So you're seeing, again, not massive changes at this point in time, but definitely nice to see things as we go through it. So new nodes, new functionality, new features. We got the Uber shader there for fast loading of shaders with ideally less hitches. We still definitely have some hitches as we went. That is the Godot 3.5 release. Go over here and fire it up. So at this point in time, this is close to the mature, stable version of Godot that we're used to now with 3.5. And there's definitely commercial games that were shipped and created using Godot 3.5. You see here we have the choice of the GLES 3 and 2 renderer at this point in time. So let's go ahead, create that folder, create and edit. And here we are in Godot 3.5. So this is, again, a lot like 3. Aesthetically, it hasn't changed a whole lot. We got definite improvements in the scripting editor side of things. You can toggle between the various different renders that are available, but everything is pretty close to what you're used to at this point in time. At this point on, we have a lot of refinement stuff, but the core features and functionality is basically here at this point. And from Godot 3.5, we had a couple more releases, I think we went up to Godot 3.6 is where we're at now in the stable branch there. And then we moved on to Godot 4. So Godot 4 came actually 5 years after the first release of Godot 3. And there was a lot of updates with Godot 4. So we got the brand new render, including Vulkan and DirectX 12 available there. A bunch of new 3D features, including Sine Distance Field Global Illumination, voxel-based global illumination. We've got voxelized fog, support for AMD FSR. 2.1 is coming in the future. Screen space indirect lighting. So basically, we've got all new renderer. Huge improvements when it comes to 3D for Godot 4.0. Improvements to the 2D tooling as well, though some people would say that there were definitely some regressions when it comes to the tile mapping tools. That's why some people chose to stay on 3.x series. GDScript got a ton of improvements in it, including fully typed. Just generally, it became more of a more mature programming language over time. GD Extension took over for GD Native as the plugin mechanism of choice. It makes it so you, instead of like what modules would do, you don't actually have to rebuild from code. So it allows you to do more complex, low-level integrated extensions for Godot without the nasty build structure. So that's GD Extensions. That's kind of the future of Godot extensions here. Improvements, we got a brand new FBX importer, which worked a whole lot better than the old one. AI improvements, so on and so forth. So there was like a ton of improvements in Godot 4, but the biggest one is definitely the new 3D renderer. Let's take a quick look at Godot 4. So you're going to see here, Project Manager got a bit of a facelift, not too much. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new project. So Godot 4, of course, this goes in C:/temp because of course it does. I always, again, find it unintuitive that the project name comes after the path. It's one of those things I found just irritating ever since I started. So here, none. So version control mechanism, you got GitHub built in. You can create it off the hop now. And then we are going to get into Godot 4 loading up. Now you will notice it is taking slightly longer to load it. So a while back we were at 23 megabytes in size. Come on. Here we go. So now we are up to a massive 111. So Godot has definitely grown a bit in size, but it's so minimalistic compared to just about everything that's out there. The editor, slight tweaking across the board. The code editor has improved a great deal. Lots of things in navigation. So if you've got something in place, you can navigate down underneath it. So here, for example, you can drill into and down to resources and keep nesting them and nesting them. I think that was a 3.x feature, to be honest, but we do have multiple different renderers available here. So you have Forward Plus. Again, there is now Vulkan support, and there is a ton of new functionality on the 3D side of things. So you have Again, the all-new renderer, you've got global illumination going on there, two mechanisms of global illumination, etc. Godot 4 was a huge step forward when it comes to the graphical side of things. And then bringing us mostly to today, because Godot 4 was released in March. Now we are in July. 4.1 was released. 4.2 beta is out right now. I've covered it recently. I'm not going to go into details of that one. So we're going to end our journey through time at Godot 4.1. We got, again, performance improvements here. The core, basically had just improvements across the board, new additions to the scripting. C# is getting better, catching up. Improvements to GD extensions once again. A bunch of improvements to the editor, including the ability to finally pop out windows, which is something I've been basically waiting for since Godot 1.0, which I definitely liked. Improvements, of course, to the rendering functionality, navigation, and so on. And let's do a quick look at the finale. So we're at Godot 4.1. And fire it up. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is this guy actually gets a facelift here. So we've got tagging support now. So you can actually, this guy right here, you see you can now tag things with add-ons. In 4. You know what? I'll show 4.2 beta as well. We'll finish it at today. So here we are in our project. I'll just go ahead and override this guy. So by the way, we are now up to 116 megabytes in size. So I still wouldn't call Godot a bloated game engine at this point in time. You haven't seen a lot of changes in the user interface since 4.0. We've kind of stabilized on the interface we're at. We can now drag tabs across. This is something I waited for a very long time with Godot. I think that was technically added in Godot 4, but that is something that was so long overdue. So this was one of the early frustrations. You can actually see how much the user interface actually evolved over time with Godot 4. And then finally, we come up to the modern day. And so that would bring us here. So you go down, you'll notice the developments. Godot 4.2 beta 5 is now available. And let's just grab it. By the way, there are two versions available of everything. So there's the standard version and then the .NET version with the mono runtime available. They're basically the same thing. It's just this one is a little bit bigger because it has the runtime built into it. Let's head on back over here. By the way, this is the install process for Godot. If you've never done it before, it's literally just open up an archive. So here we are, literally today's version. We're at 103 megabytes. We actually reduced dependency on a library that added some size. So Godot actually got a little bit smaller here. Now, the biggest reason I wanted to show you this is because we actually had a realignment of the launcher. So you're going to notice over here, we now moved the asset handling stuff over here, and then the run and edit stuff and the tag management stuff is all available over here. So again, you got the tag manager there, various different things you can do with that, which are pretty cool. Creating a project is now done over here. We'll call this Godot 4.2. And of course, it has to go in temp or it will not work right. I am, of course, kidding. So we'll create that folder. We will turn off Git. Again, you've got the choice of renderers available here. And then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to modern day. As of November the 8th, 2023, this is Godot. So we are, here we are. Not a huge amount of change aesthetically from 4.1, but it's a huge amount of progress. So again, we went from this. So this is Godot 1.0, and this was released in 2014 to this, which did not switch over for some reason. Here we go. Here, this is Godot 4.2 Beta 5, released in 2013. So just under 9 years, we went from this with, again, button-based user interfaces. The core of it's here. Everything you would expect is actually here. It's just really streamlined, no menus or no functional menus, whereas now we've got menu system across the top that's more consistent, not a bunch of buttons in place. We have a fully dockable, reconfigurable UI. We do have the ability now to pop out windows. So if you've got a code editor going on, you can actually undock it and put it on another monitor. So on the UI front, we've definitely had progression forward, and there's no question behind the scenes, things like the all new renders. We've actually had multiple renders here. So we went from OpenGL ES 2.0, OpenGL ES3, Vulkan, Direct3D 12, and so on over that span of time. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the brief history or evolution of Godot as it stands now. Basically, over just shy of a decade, we went from that to this. So I'm wondering if I do this video again in 2033. Oh my God, I'm going to be so old. In 2033, I wonder how much further we'll progress at that point in time. The trajectory for Godot has been staggering, in my opinion, but I hope you've enjoyed this little trip through time. Let me know what you think. Comments down below. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.